Hello there. It is Wednesday, July 8th. I'm Stephanie Haney. Thank you for joining me for 3 News Now. This is your afternoon update with everything topping the headlines at WKYC.com and our WKYC app. We've just got the new numbers in from the Ohio Department of Health related to COVID-19 here in the state of Ohio, and new cases are way up in the last 24 hours. So are the number of people who are currently in the hospital. The people who are currently in the intensive care unit is the same as yesterday, and the new daily reported deaths are down a bit from yesterday. Across the country, the U.S. has now surpassed 3 million known cases of COVID-19, though experts do say that it's quite possible we have many more than we know about here in the U.S. Let's get into those Ohio numbers to tell you how we're looking here in the state of Ohio. While we've passed 3 million cases in the U.S., here in Ohio, we've now passed 60,000 cases in the state of Ohio. Today, we have 1,277 new cases of COVID-19 reported. That's a big jump from yesterday when we saw 948 new cases reported. So bringing that total here in Ohio to 60,181 known and probable cases of COVID-19 here in Ohio. The total number of deaths in Ohio is getting closer and closer to 3,000. The total number is now 2,991, with 21 new deaths reported in the last 24 hours. Yesterday, we saw 43 new deaths reported. We really are seeing these death numbers bounce around quite a bit. Over the weekend, the numbers of new daily deaths were in the single digits. Then we saw 16 reported newly on Monday, 43 reported newly yesterday, and now 21 reported newly today. The total number of hospitalizations is almost at 8,500. That's dating all the way back to March 9th, with 103 new hospitalizations reported today. That brings the number of people who are in the hospital right now to 890 people. So that's about 10.5% of the people who have been hospitalized are currently in the hospital, active hospitalizations right now. If we look at ICU admissions, that total number is now at 2,127. There are 289 people currently in the intensive care unit related to COVID-19. That's the same number as we saw yesterday. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean those are all the same patients. There could have been an equal number of people discharged and admitted to the ICU, but the number is the same. And that is about 32% of people who are currently hospitalized are finding themselves in the ICU at this time. There are 26 new ICU admissions reported in the last 24 hours. Now let's take a look at the U.S. and the global numbers like we do every afternoon here on 3 News Now. The total number of U.S. cases known has now passed 3 million people. As we said, that's 3,016,515 reported cases of COVID-19 in the U.S. That is just over 63,000 new cases reported in the last 24 hours. If we look at the total number of deaths in the U.S., that is now 131,666, with a little over 1,100 new deaths reported in the last 24 hours. That puts us at about a 4.4% death rate related to COVID-19 that we know of here in the U.S. We are maintaining the percentage of 25% of the global cases and about 24% of the known global deaths related to COVID-19. The total number of cases globally related to COVID-19, and as a reminder, these numbers all come from Johns Hopkins University. The total number of global COVID-19 cases is now just under 11,900,000, almost 12 million, with the total number of deaths over 500,000. That number is 545,485. Now, as we look at how we are tackling COVID-19 here in Ohio, a big question people are asking is who will enforce the mask mandate that was announced yesterday by Governor Mike DeWine. That's coming in the form of an executive order from the Ohio Department of Health. Yesterday, during his press conference, Governor Mike DeWine said that he considered this similar to other public health orders, where in many places it's a misdemeanor to violate that, which can lead to a fine. There is potential jail time with a misdemeanor, but law officials have said they don't expect people to be arrested for violating this order. The Strongsville Police Department specifically said that they believe this is a health department issue. They do not expect arrests to be made. Yesterday, Lieutenant Governor John Husted said that it is not up to businesses to enforce this mask mandate. Now, again, this mask mandate is in 7 counties currently here in the state of Ohio. This is for the counties who are under a level 3 red alert related to COVID-19. And according to the order, if those counties fall below that level 3 red alert, the restrictions will fall off and masks will no longer be required in public places, though they are strongly recommended throughout the state of Ohio right now. So Lieutenant Governor John Husted said, "We don't expect the grocery store worker to physically have to impose the order. That would turn that over in that case where there's an extreme violation to the local community to enforce it. It is not up to the business to enforce it." Now, if we take a look at things that have happened here in Cleveland and Cuyahoga County, in Cleveland, under Mayor Frank Jackson's executive order that was put into effect on Friday, there were fines laid out for both businesses that had employees and customers not complying with the mask order. And in the Cuyahoga County iteration of what this order looked like, which was sort of circumvented by Governor Mike DeWine's announcement yesterday, there were fines laid out for second and subsequent violations for people of $50. So $50 fines expected there if Cuyahoga County does move forward with that order, which they certainly could, because it's possible that Cuyahoga County could drop to a level 2 and then this executive order would not apply any longer to Cuyahoga County. So we'll keep an eye on that. Now, when we look at what's happening around the states and as we look to the fall, there are a lot of questions about school returning, whether that will happen online or in person. We talked this morning about federal regulations that would require international students to take in-person classes or be forced to leave the U.S. if their classes are all online. There are schools challenging that. There's already been a lawsuit filed by Harvard and both MIT that is challenging that and saying that it is both cruel and unnecessary and that there was no public commenting period. But there was a coronavirus task force briefing today, and at that briefing, Vice President Mike Pence said the Centers for Disease Control will issue updated guidelines for schools to safely reopen. Education Secretary Betsy DeVos said this: "Ultimately, it's not a matter of if schools should reopen, simply a matter of how. They must fully open and they must be fully operational, and how that happens is best left to education and community leaders." Of course, those education and community leaders are taking the guidance that they can from medical experts and professionals. Here in Ohio, Governor Mike DeWine laid out 5 guidelines that were very broad sweeping of ways in order to get schools to be able to reopen, and education experts do agree that in-person learning is the best from a learning standpoint. Where there is some disagreement is what's best from a health and safety standpoint. Now, at that coronavirus task force briefing today, CDC Director Robert Redfield said that they don't want the agency's guidelines to be used as a reason for schools not to open in the fall. President Donald Trump was not at the briefing, but he did tweet that he disagreed with the CDC on what he called very tough and aggressive guidelines for opening schools. Trump tweeted, "While they want them to open, they are asking schools to do very impractical things." He said he will be meeting with them. Now, at the briefing, Vice President Mike Pence was there, and he said that the CDC will be issuing new guidelines and a new set of tools soon to provide more clarity for how to safely reopen schools in the fall, should that prove to be possible. From an economic standpoint, we do know that the schools will have to pay for things like hand sanitizer, and we also know from an economic standpoint, lots of people are still suffering because of the COVID-19 pandemic, with things being closed and being out of work. So there is continued discussion about a second stimulus package, but the income cap on this might be lower. So Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has proposed a $1 trillion bill that would provide another round of stimulus payments to Americans, but this time the cutoff would be at an annual salary of $40,000. Now, if we compare that with the U.S. CARES Act, that sent $1,200 checks to people who made $75,000 or less. And then if you were at an income level higher than that, there were different amounts of checks that were sent out. Now, McConnell's proposal is very different than what Democrats are proposing. Democrats proposed triple the size. They proposed a $3 trillion bill that would end up helping a lot more people, obviously, because it's 3 times the amount of money. Right now, U.S. Congress is on a 2-week hiatus, so they'll be back in session on July 20th. There is definitely divide on how they think this second round of stimulus payments should play out. The first U.S. CARES Act passed pretty much unanimously, and now there is definitely some more contention as to what is the best approach in order to provide people with the economic support they need related to COVID-19. Now, Republicans view that what Democrats want as excessive. They argue that more aid is needed, and that bill includes new worker health and safety protocols to ensure what they think will be a safe reopening. Keep in mind, there is a weekly boost coming from the federal government right now to people who are receiving state unemployment. That's an additional $600, along with whatever you're getting from the state if you are on unemployment at this time. Now, that will end July 31st if Congress doesn't act when they come back on July 20th before July 31st. Speaking of things that are closing related to COVID-19, we have just learned this afternoon that Hofbrauhaus Cleveland is temporarily closing. That's after 2 of their staff members tested positive for COVID-19. So in a Facebook post, the company said that they take their responsibility to the public very seriously. They've worked very hard to create a safe environment. They've been following all the protocols related to COVID-19 safety, but despite that, 2 of their staff members did test positive for COVID-19. Now, this is important. It is their understanding that the people who were exposed to the virus outside of the restaurant. Why does that matter? That matters because what we are seeing right now are people with different requirements when they go into restaurants, whether you're a customer or an employee. So Hofbrauhaus is saying that these employees who tested positive on Monday, July 6th, were likely exposed to the virus outside of the restaurant. So what they have done is they are closing their doors immediately until further notice as a precaution so that they can keep the city employees and guests safe. They will thoroughly clean and sanitize the facility, and then they will move forward once it's been deemed to be safe for them to reopen. They will keep everyone posted on their social media accounts, and we, of course, will keep you posted on WKYC.com and our WKYC app. Now, it is July 8th, so let's take a little trip down memory lane because it is the 10th anniversary of LeBron James's The Decision. And we all remember that. It was after 7 seasons with the Cleveland Cavaliers that LeBron James decided whether he was going to leave his home state here in Ohio and move on to other opportunities. And he announced his decision in a nationally televised event on ESPN that was called The Decision. Now remember, LeBron James was 25 years old at that time. It's hard to imagine a LeBron James that's 25 years old, but 10 years ago he was. And the backlash to the decision was brutal from fans here in Ohio. To add insult to injury, the next day, James joined fellow All-Stars and new teammates Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh on stage at a pep rally in Miami. So it happened. He left us. He went to Miami. He spent 4 seasons there. He won 2 NBA championships there in 2012 and 2013, but then he came back. He came back to the Cavs in 2014, but this time there was no decision special. He announced his decision to come back to the Cleveland Cavaliers in an essay in Sports Illustrated. It was co-authored by Lee Jenkins, and it was kind of a love letter to Northeast Ohio. In that article, he said, "In Northeast Ohio, nothing is given, everything is earned. You work for what you have. I'm ready to accept the challenge. I'm coming home." Now, James was very particular with his wording in that essay. He made it a point not to promise to deliver a championship to the city of Cleveland, but he did anyway. In 2016, he led the Cavs to a comeback from a 3-1 series deficit against the Golden State Warriors and brought Cleveland's first major professional sports championship in 52 years. And everyone was very happy about that. And then He left us again for the Lakers, but there was no big decision, none of that hubbub about it at that time. He just said he was going to do what was right for his family. He went to the Lakers, and we all seem to take it a little bit better this time. But we have to remember that day that happened 10 years ago today, because it was a big deal here in Northeast Ohio, and it hurt. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame now and what their plans are for 2020. They have decided to cancel the in-person 2020 induction ceremony, and they are replacing the event with an HBO special. So there will be no 2020 induction in person, but the 2020 inductee exhibit will debut at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame on August 14th, and the special honoring this year's inductees will air on November 7th at 8 p.m. on HBO. You'll also be able to watch it streaming on HBO Max. Let me give you a reminder of the people who are being inducted this year. Depeche Mode, the Doobie Brothers, Whitney Houston, 9 Inch Nails, the Notorious B.I.G., T-Rex, John Lando, and Irving Azoff. So if you did have tickets, don't worry, you will be refunded automatically if you purchase those tickets through Ticketmaster. If you purchase them through another retailer, you'll need to discuss with the people, with the organization that you purchased those tickets at in order to get your refund. Rock Hall officials did say that the 2021 induction ceremony will take place in Cleveland next fall in person. That is the plan. So no in-person induction this year. We'll be able to see it on HBO. They expect for that to return in 2021 for the 2021 induction class. One more thought to leave you with here, and many people are questioning whether they should cancel their summer vacation plans because of coronavirus concerns. Well, according to Governor Mike DeWine, it depends on where you're going and what you want to do. He specifically singled out Florida. He did say here in Ohio we do have serious spread issues that we need to contain, but he mentioned hot spots in other places and that we need to be aware of what we're doing and where we're going. So specifically singled out Florida. This is what he said. If someone is coming back from Florida and they've been out at bars and restaurants every night, I would be very, very concerned about them. I think they should be concerned. Now, in contrast to that, DeWine said if they went to Florida and stayed in a house, stayed in a hotel room, and just went out and went to the beach, staying away from people to enjoy the sun, they're in a different situation. I think a lot depends on the situation that they're in. So according to DeWine, the moral of the story seems to be wherever you are, to maintain that physical distance of 6 feet, wear your mask in public, follow the safety protocols, and if that's the case, it might not necessarily matter where you are, just as long as you're doing what you would be doing if you were assuming that everyone around you has COVID-19, which is what medical experts have been telling us to do for several months now. All right, that is it for your 3 News Now afternoon update. I'll have more for you at 5 p.m. on What's New, which you can stream in the WKYC app, also on WKYC.com. That'll be hosted by Betsy Kling and Romney Smith in for Jay Crawford today. You can catch the rest of our shows as well in the WKYC app. So if you don't yet have that, I highly recommend downloading it. You can download it for free in the App Store on an iOS device and in the Google Play Store on an Android device. And I'll see you back here tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. with your top headlines from WKYC.com and our WKYC app. Everyone enjoy the rest of your afternoon. I'll see you back here at 5 on WKYC.com with What's New, and on Channel 3 with What's New, and in the app on What's New, and back here tomorrow morning.